She can go days without talking to you. Days. And you've felt every single one of them. You've checked your phone more times than you can count. You've drafted messages and deleted them. You've told yourself you're fine, and then found yourself thinking about her at 2 in the morning, wondering what she's doing, wondering if she's thinking about you, wondering what you did wrong, or if you did anything wrong at all. Here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. The fact that she can go silent isn't necessarily the end of something. Sometimes it's the beginning of a test you didn't know you were taking, and most guys fail it, not because they don't care enough, but because they care in all the wrong ways, in ways that are visible, anxious, and constant. What I'm going to walk you through today is the psychology behind why this dynamic happens, what it's actually telling you, and the specific steps that shift the entire situation. Not manipulation, not games. Real psychological principles that, when you apply them, change the way you're perceived, the way you feel about yourself, and the way she thinks about you when she's lying in bed at midnight with her phone in her hand. Let's start at the surface, because most people stop here and never go deeper. When a woman goes days without reaching out, the instinct is to interpret that as a clear message. She's not interested. She's moved on. She's talking to someone else. And maybe one of those things is true. But here's what's also true, and this is the part that gets overlooked almost every single time. People, all people, pull back from things that feel too stable, too resolved, too guaranteed. This isn't cruelty, it's psychology. The human brain is wired to engage more intensely with things that carry some degree of uncertainty. Not chaos, not anxiety, but the natural tension that comes from something not being completely locked down. When something is always available, always responsive, always right there, the brain categorizes it as low priority. Not because it isn't valuable, but because it doesn't require attention to maintain. Think about it this way. You probably have a lamp in your living room that you haven't really noticed in months. It's there every day. It does its job. But you don't think about it. Now imagine one day you come home, and the lamp is off, and you're suddenly aware of it in a way you never were before. The absence created the awareness. That's not a perfect metaphor for a person, obviously, but the psychological mechanics are the same. What's always present doesn't get noticed. What shifts, changes, or goes quiet suddenly demands attention. So when she goes days without talking to you, and you fill that silence with texts, with check-ins, with "hey, just thinking about you" messages, you're essentially keeping the lamp on constantly, and she stops noticing it's there. Now here's the deeper layer, and this is where things get genuinely interesting. Every time you make yourself completely available, every time you respond within seconds, every time you're the one initiating, you are solving a problem she hasn't felt yet. You're removing the space where longing would naturally grow. And longing, real longing, is what drives someone to pick up their phone and reach out. Think about the last time you genuinely missed someone. Not someone you saw an hour ago, but someone you hadn't heard from in a while. Someone whose presence had been a regular part of your world and then suddenly wasn't. There was probably a moment, maybe small, where something reminded you of them. A song, a place, a joke no one else would have laughed at the same way. And in that moment, you felt it. The pull, the want to reach out. That feeling doesn't develop in constant contact. It can't. There's no room for it. Missing someone requires contrast. It requires a before and an after. And if you are always the after, always the response, always the one filling the silence, she never gets to feel what it's like when you're not there. This is the deepest truth underneath all of it. You cannot be missed if you never go anywhere. And most guys, when they feel the distance, they close it. Immediately. Instinctively. Because it feels like the right thing to do. It feels like effort, like showing up, like not playing games. But from her side of it, what it actually feels like is pressure. It feels like a notification she hasn't responded to yet. And the more those pile up, the more she pulls back. Not because she doesn't like you, but because the dynamic has started to feel heavy. So, here's what you actually do. The first step is what I call the silence that speaks. And I want to be clear about what this is and what it isn't. Going quiet is not punishment. It's not a power move designed to make her anxious. It's a recalibration. It's you deciding consciously to stop being the one who chases the conversation. What this looks like practically: you stop initiating for a defined period of time. Not forever, not dramatically. You simply stop being the first message, the first call, the first to fill the gap. If she reaches out, you respond warmly, genuinely, without manufactured coldness. But you are not the one creating the contact anymore. The reason this works isn't because absence makes the heart grow fonder in some vague poetic sense. It's because your absence forces her brain to notice the difference. When the messages stop coming, her mind will, at some point, generate a question. Where did he go? And questions create curiosity. Curiosity creates engagement. That's the mechanism. Here's what most people don't realize about this step. The hardest part isn't not texting her. The hardest part is tolerating the discomfort of not knowing what she's thinking. You're going to want to break the silence just to relieve your own anxiety. Don't. That anxiety is information. It's telling you how much of your emotional stability you've placed in her hands. Sit with it. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of reclaiming something. The second step is reclaiming your own narrative. And this one is more important than most people give it credit for. Here's the reality. If you've been focused on her for any length of time, your life has probably narrowed. Not completely, not visibly, but internally. She's become the lens through which you're evaluating your days. Good day. She texted back quickly. Bad day. She left you on read. And when your emotional weather is being controlled by someone else's phone habits, you have quietly lost the plot of your own story. What you need to do now, genuinely and not performatively, is remember that you have a life that exists entirely outside of this situation, and you need to start living it with the same energy you've been pouring into her. This isn't the generic advice to just focus on yourself. That phrase has been emptied of all meaning. I'm talking about something specific. Make a list right now, in your head or on paper, of 3 things you've been putting off that have nothing to do with her. A hobby you dropped, a trip you keep thinking about, a project you started and abandoned, a friendship you've let go quiet. Pick one. This week. Do it. Not because it'll make her jealous, not as a strategy, but because the version of you who is genuinely absorbed in his own life is a fundamentally different person than the one sitting by his phone. She can feel that difference even before you say a word about it. People who are fully living their own lives carry a different energy. It's visible, it's attractive, and it's something you cannot fake. This brings us to the third step, and pay close attention here because this is the one most people completely skip over. The energy shift. How you feel about yourself right now is being broadcast in every interaction you have, including the ones you're not even having yet. When you're anxious, when you're waiting, when your self-worth is quietly tied to whether she responds, that energy shows up in the tone of your messages, in the way you respond when she does reach out, in the subtle neediness that creeps into even casual conversation. And she feels it. Women are extraordinarily perceptive about this, not in a calculated way, just in the way that anyone who is emotionally intelligent picks up on what's underneath what's being said. So the work here is internal. And it starts with a simple but honest question. If she never reached out again, what would your life look like? If the answer is, honestly, pretty empty right now, that's important information. It means you've been treating this connection as a substitute for things you need to be building on your own. Confidence, purpose, a social life that energizes you, work or creative output that makes you feel capable and alive. None of that comes from her. And the moment you start building it independent of her, you will notice a shift in yourself that is almost hard to describe. You'll feel less urgent, less tense, more grounded. And that version of you, the one who is okay whether this works out or not, is genuinely magnetic in a way that needy waiting simply is not. Here's a specific thing you can do. Every morning this week, before you check your phone, spend 5 minutes doing something that has nothing to do with anyone else. Read a page of something that interests you. Walk outside, sit with coffee and no screen. It sounds small. It is small. But it's a declaration to your own nervous system that your day begins with you, not with whether she's texted. The fourth step is the one move that changes the dynamic when you do resurface, because eventually you will, and how you show up in that moment resets everything. After you've been quiet, after you've reclaimed some of your energy, after you've genuinely reinvested in your own life, there will come a moment to re-engage. And when that moment comes, most guys undo all of their progress in about 30 seconds by showing up the exact same way they always have. Eager, over-explaining, slightly too available, hoping she noticed the absence and immediately trying to close the distance. Here's what you do instead. When you reach out, or when she does and you respond, you bring something. Not something manufactured or designed to impress, just something real. An observation. A genuine question about something she mentioned weeks ago. A funny or interesting thing that happened to you that she would actually appreciate. You show up as someone who has been living, not someone who has been waiting. The energy of that interaction is completely different from what she's been used to. You're not leaning in desperately. You're just there. Present, real, and unbothered by the outcome. And that combination, genuine engagement without desperate attachment, is the precise energy that creates attraction. This is also where you set, gently but clearly, a different rhythm. You don't respond to a text within seconds anymore. Not because you're playing games, but because your life has actual things in it now. You respond when it's natural to respond. You reach out when you have something worth saying. You are not performing unavailability. You are actually living a life that makes you genuinely, naturally less available than you were before. She will notice. She may not say it, but the dynamic will shift. The fifth step is the one that requires the most from you, and it's also the most powerful. It's letting the outcome go. This doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It means releasing your grip on the specific result you've been white-knuckling. Because here's what that grip is costing you. It's keeping you in a state of low-grade anxiety that is aging you, narrowing your focus, and making every interaction with her feel just slightly too heavy. The most magnetic version of any person is the one who is genuinely okay with how things unfold. Not because they're emotionally detached or checked out, but because their foundation doesn't depend on one specific person making one specific choice. That kind of groundedness is rare, and it is deeply, profoundly attractive. Here's how to practice this in a real way. Every time you feel the urge to check her social media, to analyze her last message for hidden meaning, to rehearse what you're going to say when she texts, redirect that energy with one question. What do I actually want to be doing right now, separate from this situation? And then go do that thing. Over time, this builds something you can't manufacture from the outside. It builds a self-concept that isn't contingent on her approval. And when she eventually reaches out, because the steps you've taken change the dynamic in ways that make that far more likely, you will respond from a place of genuine ease rather than barely contained relief. And that difference is everything. Quick note before we wrap this up. All of this is built on the assumption that you're dealing with a situation that has genuine potential, where there's been real connection, mutual interest, and no serious disrespect or red flags. If the silence you're experiencing comes alongside behavior that consistently makes you feel small, dismissed, or anxious, these aren't strategies. That's a pattern worth paying attention to separately. You deserve a connection that doesn't require this much management from the start. But if that's not your situation, if this is someone who showed real warmth and then went inconsistent, if you've been showing up in an anxious way that's been working against you, then everything we've covered here changes the equation. Here's what you're really doing with all of this. You are becoming someone different, not performing a version of yourself you think she wants. Becoming, genuinely, a man who lives fully, who doesn't contract around uncertainty, who is present without being desperate. That version of you isn't a tactic. It's the destination. And the beautiful irony is that in doing the work to get there, you stop needing her to reach out in the same desperate way you once did. And that's exactly when people reach out. The man who doesn't need the validation somehow always gets it. Not because the universe is dramatic, but because people are drawn to those who are at home in themselves. She's no different. So this week, not next week, this week, go quiet. Reclaim one piece of your life that has nothing to do with her. Shift your morning so it starts with you. And let go, just a little, of the specific outcome you've been holding so tightly. You have more power in this situation than you've been using. Not power over her, power over yourself, your energy, your story. And that's the only kind that ever actually matters. If this gave you a new way of looking at what you're going through, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe because we go this deep every week into the psychology of connection, attraction, and building the kind of inner foundation that changes everything on the outside too. I'll see you in the next one.